A family spent $400,000 building their dream home, and less than 2 years later, the entire foundation was sinking into the ground beneath them. Nobody noticed until the front door stopped closing properly. By the time anyone called an expert, the damage was already invisible, spreading silently beneath the floors, waiting to surface at the worst possible moment. If you're the kind of person who wants to know exactly what's happening behind your walls, under your floors, and beneath your foundation before it becomes a disaster, subscribe now, because every week we break down real construction failures that homeowners across the country wish they had caught in time. This particular home looked flawless from the outside. Fresh paint, a manicured lawn, a driveway so clean it looked like it belonged in a magazine. But underneath that perfect exterior, a mistake had already been made months earlier, back when nobody was watching, back when a crew was rushing to finish the job before the next one started. The problem began with soil. Not glamorous, not exciting, but soil is the single most important thing beneath every home in America. And it's the one thing most homeowners never think about. Before construction even starts, soil is supposed to be tested, compacted, and prepared to handle the enormous weight of a house for decades. But on this job, the crew skipped a critical step. Instead of properly compacting the soil layer by layer, they rushed the process, dumping fill dirt in large sections and moving straight to the foundation pour. At first, it doesn't seem like a serious problem. The concrete goes down, the walls go up, everything looks solid. But underneath, that improperly compacted soil is still settling, shifting in tiny increments that are invisible to the human eye. Most homeowners never notice this happening until months later, when a hairline crack appears near a window. It looks small, it looks harmless. Most people paint over it and forget about it. But that crack is a message. It's the house telling you that something underneath is moving. Here's where everything changed for this particular family. The hairline crack widened. Doors that used to close smoothly started sticking. Then came the moment that terrified them, a diagonal crack stretching from the corner of a window frame all the way down toward the foundation line. That diagonal pattern is one of the clearest warning signs in residential construction, because it usually means one side of the house is sinking faster than the other. When a structural engineer finally inspected the property, what he found underneath shocked even him. Instead of a stable, evenly compacted base, the soil beneath one corner of the home had compressed nearly 3 inches more than the rest of the foundation. The entire structure was slowly twisting, like a table with one leg shorter than the others. Except this table weighed hundreds of thousands of pounds and was filled with a family's furniture, memories, and life savings. The fix wasn't simple paint and caulk. It required underpinning, a process where steel piers are driven deep into stable soil beneath the home to lift and stabilize the sinking sections. Watching a professional crew perform this kind of repair is like watching surgery on a building. Hydraulic jacks slowly raise sections of the foundation millimeter by millimeter, while engineers monitor movement with laser precision, making sure nothing cracks further during the lift. It's slow, it's expensive, and it's the exact opposite of the rushed, careless work that caused the problem in the first place. But the biggest mistake hadn't even happened yet. While inspectors were underground stabilizing the foundation, they discovered something nobody expected: water. Not a small puddle, but a consistent trickle seeping in from a gap where the original waterproofing membrane had never been properly sealed. This is one of the most common and most costly contractor mistakes in the entire industry, because it's completely invisible until the damage becomes severe. Waterproofing might sound like a minor detail, but professionals treat it as one of the most critical stages of construction. A proper foundation waterproofing system uses a continuous membrane wrapped seamlessly around every seam, corner, and joint, paired with a drainage layer that channels water away before it ever touches the concrete. When it's done correctly, water simply never becomes a problem. When it's done incorrectly, which is exactly what happened here, water finds every weakness. It seeps through unsealed gaps, settles against untreated concrete, and slowly begins breaking down the surface from the inside out. This process can take months, sometimes years, which is exactly why so many homeowners never connect the dots until it's too late. This hidden detail changes everything about how serious this situation really was. Because water intrusion isn't just a structural issue, it's a health issue. Once moisture becomes trapped inside walls or beneath flooring, mold spores can begin developing within as little as 24 to 48 hours in the right conditions. And once mold establishes itself inside wall cavities, it becomes extremely difficult and expensive to fully remove, often requiring entire sections of drywall, insulation, and flooring to be torn out and replaced. The family in this story began noticing a musty smell in their basement. At first, they assumed it was just dampness from humidity. Most homeowners make this same assumption, dismissing early warning signs because they seem minor. But when an inspector finally opened up a section of the basement wall, the extent of the damage became impossible to ignore. Black mold had spread behind the drywall, climbing upward in a pattern that mirrored exactly where water had been leaking in for months. Now comes the part that costs homeowners the most money. Correcting foundation movement is expensive. Correcting water intrusion is expensive. But correcting both, combined with a full mold remediation process, can push repair costs into six figures, depending on the extent of the damage. This is the harsh reality of what happens when early mistakes are ignored instead of addressed. Professional contractors have a saying that applies perfectly here. The cheapest mistake is the one you catch early, and the most expensive mistake is the one you ignore. A hairline crack, when caught early and inspected by a professional, might cost a few $100s to monitor and seal. Left unaddressed for years, it can spiral into structural repairs costing tens of thousands of dollars, plus the additional expense of mold remediation, plus the emotional toll of watching a dream home slowly become a source of stress and fear. There was one critical mistake almost nobody noticed during the entire process, and it goes back to the very beginning of the project. Before ground was ever broken, a proper soil analysis should have identified the composition and stability of the earth beneath the home. This test, often overlooked by contractors trying to save time and money, is one of the most important steps in preventing exactly the kind of disaster this family experienced. Skipping it is like building a house on a foundation of uncertainty, hoping everything underground will simply behave the way you expect it to. Not every construction mistake involves the foundation. Some of the most dangerous and costly errors happen in places homeowners rarely think to inspect, like the roof. Picture a beautiful two-story home with a freshly installed roof, dark shingles perfectly aligned, gleaming under the afternoon sun. From the ground, it looks like flawless craftsmanship. But roofs are deceptive because the real quality of the work isn't visible from the street. It's hidden beneath the shingles themselves, in the layers most homeowners never see. A properly installed roof relies on several unseen components working together. There's an underlayment that acts as a secondary barrier against water. There's proper flashing around chimneys, vents, and valleys to prevent leaks in the most vulnerable areas. And there's proper ventilation, allowing heat and moisture to escape from the attic space instead of becoming trapped. On one particular job, a contractor skipped proper flashing installation around a chimney, choosing instead to rely almost entirely on a thick layer of roofing cement. This might seem like a reasonable shortcut, but roofing cement deteriorates over time, especially when exposed to temperature swings between freezing winters and scorching summers. What starts as a seemingly secure seal slowly cracks and separates, creating a hidden pathway for water to enter. At first, nothing seems wrong. But here's where everything changed. During a particularly heavy storm season, water began seeping through that compromised flashing, traveling down through the attic insulation completely unnoticed. Because attics are rarely visited by most homeowners, this leak continued undetected for an entire season, soaking insulation, staining ceiling drywall from above, and creating the perfect environment for mold growth in a space nobody ever thinks to check. The first visible sign wasn't in the attic at all. It was a small brown stain that appeared on the ceiling of an upstairs bedroom. Most homeowners see a stain like this and assume it's a minor, one-time leak. But by the time a stain becomes visible on a ceiling, the damage above it has usually been developing for weeks or even months. When a roofing professional finally inspected the attic, the extent of the damage was shocking. Insulation was completely saturated, wooden roof trusses showed early signs of rot, and mold had begun spreading across a significant portion of the plywood roof decking. What could have been a simple flashing repair, costing a few $100s, had become a massive project requiring replacement of insulation, decking, and even structural framing components. This is exactly why professional roofers insist on proper flashing installation using metal step flashing integrated directly with the shingles, rather than relying on sealants and cement as a substitute. Metal flashing creates a permanent, rigid barrier that doesn't degrade the way cement does over time. It's slightly more expensive and takes more skill to install correctly, but it's the difference between a roof that lasts 30 years and one that fails within 5. Electrical mistakes tell an even more dangerous story, because unlike a slow-moving foundation crack or a hidden roof leak, electrical failures can create immediate, life-threatening danger. In one widely discussed case among home inspectors, a homeowner hired an unlicensed contractor to complete a basement renovation, adding a home theater and an extra bedroom. The work looked impressive. New drywall, elegant lighting, a beautifully finished space. But behind the walls, the electrical work told a completely different story. Instead of running new dedicated circuits to handle the additional electrical load, the contractor simply tapped into existing circuits that were never designed to handle the extra demand. This is one of the most dangerous shortcuts in residential construction, because overloaded circuits generate excess heat, and excess heat inside a wall cavity, surrounded by insulation and wood framing, creates a serious fire risk. Most homeowners never notice this danger, because everything works perfectly fine, at least initially. Lights turn on, outlets function normally. There's no obvious sign of a problem. But every time multiple high-demand devices are used simultaneously, the wiring inside the walls heats up beyond safe levels, slowly damaging the insulation around the wires themselves. This particular family started noticing small warning signs that most people would dismiss. Outlets that felt slightly warm to the touch, a flickering light when the television and sound system were running together, a faint burning smell that appeared occasionally, then disappeared. Each of these signs individually seems minor, but combined, they're a clear warning that professional electricians immediately recognize as a serious hazard. Fortunately for this family, they contacted a licensed electrician before disaster struck. When he opened the wall to inspect the wiring, he found scorched insulation along one of the overloaded circuits, dangerously close to igniting into a full electrical fire. What looked like a beautifully finished basement was actually hiding one of the most dangerous mistakes a contractor can make. The correct approach, the one every licensed electrician follows, involves calculating the electrical load of a space before any work begins, then installing dedicated circuits sized specifically for that load, protected by properly rated breakers. It's not glamorous work, and it's completely invisible once the walls are finished. But it's the difference between a safe home and a hidden fire hazard. Drainage problems create a different kind of slow-moving disaster, one that often takes years to fully reveal itself. Picture a home with a beautifully landscaped backyard, complete with a paved patio and decorative stonework. It looks stunning, exactly what any homeowner would want. But grading, the subtle slope of the ground around a home, is one of the most overlooked details in residential construction. Professional builders understand that the ground around a foundation needs to slope away from the house, allowing rainwater to flow away naturally instead of pooling near the foundation walls. On one property, a landscaping contractor installed a patio that unintentionally sloped slightly toward the house instead of away from it, a mistake that seems minor but creates a slow, silent disaster over time. Every time it rained, water would collect against the foundation instead of draining away. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The concrete patio looked perfect. The yard looked perfect. But underground, that consistently pooling water was slowly seeping into the foundation walls, creating hydrostatic pressure, essentially a constant push of water trying to force its way through even the smallest imperfection in the concrete. Years later, the homeowners began noticing efflorescence, a white, chalky residue forming on their basement walls. Most people assume this is just dirt or a cosmetic issue, but professionals immediately recognize it as a sign that water has been moving through the concrete for an extended period, leaving behind mineral deposits as it evaporates. By the time a foundation specialist inspected the property, the constant water pressure had caused small cracks throughout the basement walls, allowing moisture to seep through steadily, especially during heavy rain. This is a perfect example of how a seemingly small landscaping mistake, invisible to the average homeowner, can lead directly to significant structural and water damage years down the road. The solution involved regrading the entire area around the foundation, ensuring proper slope away from the home, combined with installing a drainage system to redirect water safely away from the property. It's a project that costs a fraction of full foundation repair, which is exactly why professionals emphasize proper grading and drainage from the very first day of construction. Every one of these stories shares a common thread. The most expensive, most dangerous construction mistakes are almost never the ones you can see. They're hidden in the soil beneath your foundation, behind the shingles on your roof, inside the walls surrounding your electrical wiring, and beneath the ground surrounding your home. Skilled, licensed professionals understand this, which is exactly why proper construction takes more time, more inspection, and more attention to detail than most homeowners realize. The good news is that every single one of these disasters was preventable. Proper soil compaction prevents foundation settling. Correct waterproofing prevents water intrusion. Professional flashing prevents roof leaks. Dedicated electrical circuits prevent fire hazards. Correct grading prevents drainage problems. None of these solutions are mysterious or complicated. They simply require contractors who prioritize doing the job correctly over doing it quickly. For homeowners, the lesson is just as important. Regular inspections, even when nothing seems obviously wrong, can catch these hidden problems long before they become expensive disasters. A hairline crack, a musty smell, a warm outlet, a slightly damp patch near the foundation. These small signs are often the only warning you'll get before a much larger problem reveals itself. The homes in these stories all looked perfect from the outside, which is exactly what makes these mistakes so dangerous. Beauty on the surface can hide serious problems underneath, And the only way to truly know what's happening behind your walls and beneath your foundation is to look closer, ask questions, and never assume that a finished, polished appearance means everything was done correctly. If this investigation opened your eyes to how much can go wrong behind a perfectly painted wall or beneath a beautifully finished floor, make sure you're subscribed, because next time we're going even deeper into another real construction case, uncovering the hidden mistakes that could be sitting inside a home right now, waiting to be discovered.